for the opportunity to speak here tonight. I threw some slides together just to give you a taste of some of the work that we're doing. I hope it's sort of coherent, but just don't heckle too loudly if it's not. And it's a bit of a precursor to a seminar that we're running in September the 15th, because we'll put together a one-day seminar where you can get more detail coming through. But you should get an idea tonight of some of the ways we're trying to translate what we do into something that you can use. So that's a big focus for CSIRO at the moment. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands upon which we meet, the Wadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past and present, and recognise them as the first earth scientists that walk lands here. Okay, so why are we worried? We're worried because we need 500% more nickel in the next sort of so many years. And we're going to need actually 500% more lithium and 500% more nickel than lithium, I think the numbers are. And it's a real problem for us because we don't just have to find them, we have to work out better ways, faster ways of finding them, and more environmentally friendly ways of digging them out of the ground. And we're in a time now where we are very aware of environmental issues and issues around communities. So we need to, whatever we do going forward, it needs to be transparent, and we just need to be basically very efficient in what we do. So how are we going to achieve that? This is a diagram that my son drew for me, and it's basically meant to be where like we would have worked pretty much with, really, when I was mapping for the Geological survey, it was pen and air photos mapping. Now we're really using machines to augment what we do. So we're bringing in that decision support into everything we do. And it's about doing that in a more efficient way, in a way that we can understand. So not sending something off into a black box, but really understanding what we're sending into that algorithm or whatever, and what it's doing to that data. So this is what we do in Discovery. We look at exploration through cover, and actually ore body knowledge is really what we're focused on. I've just got this one slide up here. And what we're doing is trying to build from the fundamental science that we are doing the decision support that will help with the discovery of the next generation of mineral deposits. We're doing that, we're getting that out through a project that we call Exploration Toolkit in-house, or XT. We stood this up 12 months ago, so not that long ago, and I'm just going to give you a flavour of some of the things that will come out via XT going forward. So I'm not going to talk through this. An engineer did this for me, okay, so we won't. So I don't have to say anything else. Software engineer, not a mining engineer, but yeah. And I had 20 of them in my team. Okay, so basically, this is how they see what their job is that they're building core libraries and tools, and they're different to what we call core libraries and tools. From those core libraries and tools, there'll be services that come off the back of them. And they'll be hosted in different repositories. And we're building on work that CSIRO has done before in MAGDA with GeoServer and EasyHub, which is, I won't go into it, but it's basically a coding and computational environment that's being rolled out globally. So what have we got in there? So as I said, we started the XT project only 12 months ago on the 1st of July, 2021. And we've already got an app for you to be able to deal with your HydroT data. It's not public yet because we're testing it, but basically what we did was we took all of the code that, the Excel spreadsheets that all these data were in, okay, basically, and all of the work that Dave Gray did over many years. And we coded it, okay? So we had geoscientists, geochemists sitting down with engineers, and they basically codified that head. basically. So the idea will be is that you'll be able to pop your data in to this app, click on particular indices that you want the app to that you want the data to be manipulated by, if you like, and get an answer at the end that you can see spatially. So it's pretty simple, but it took quite a lot of work, believe it or not. And you should have seen some of those equations. Unbelievable. It was difficult to understand what David's speaking. Well, for me, because I'm a structural geologist, so I don't understand geochemistry very deeply. One of the other things that we've developed recently is something called the MPL Toolbox. So we have, and I'll get onto that later on, in CSIRO we partnered with Oscope and the University of Melbourne, and we've containerised a multispectral scanning system, so a GeoTech system, to roll out across Australia. So anybody can use it basically. They can basically hire this system. And the idea is to take petrophysical data from your core. Okay, so we're not really using our petrophysical data as well as perhaps we would like to going forward. And we want to use the petrophysical data to help us to understand our geophysical data and vice versa. So in doing that, we developed an app to deal with the data that comes off that machine. So I think they've got some things listed here. So P-wave plots, calibration, file handling, QA/QC processing of the data. But you can use this for any data. So you don't have a multispectral scanner, or you're not using our MPL, our mobile petrophysical logger. You can still use this for your own petrophysical data or any data, and get your plots. So you can see them side by side and start to sort of review them. Data Mosaic has been commercialised now, and it will form part of XT. Data Mosaic will become really our core logging tool, and we're already working. So the original Data Mosaic, which is this one here, basically it's a multivariant. It uses you're able to log your call using multivariant data, and it clusters that data using a lot of code and maths, basically, and it just basically breaks that code up into different clusters, and then you can choose what domain you want in terms of the logs that you'll present to the board, or the logs that you'll use to actually map out your deposit or otherwise. We are expanding this platform, so at the moment we've got another set of algorithms that we'll be putting into this, that will be able to take in data that is very sort of basically highly dimensional. So data beyond geochemistry and beyond petrophysics, for example. And so we're looking at sort of hyperspectral data to bring into these systems. One of the other things we're doing, and you may have heard about this before, we're trying to take what we do in the lab and make it available for people in the field. So in the laboratory, we want to get detailed mineralogy of something like this. We might stick it, we might have a look at it in thin section, but then not be satisfied. Then we might stick it on a scanning electron microprobe. And we've done that for, I don't know, 100,000 samples at CSIRO in the last, I don't know, 5 years. But what we decided was that can we take those libraries that we've developed from the scanning electron microprobe, and can we train LIBS spectra, so laser-induced breakdown spectroscopy spectra, to tell us what the mineralogy of a rock is. And actually we can. So this LIBS spectra here was, you know, the analysis takes about 8 minutes. On an electron microprobe, you're looking at a day to get that that data, and you can see there's the mineralogy here. And this wouldn't have been possible if we hadn't have trained the LIBS spectra, the data that comes off that machine. This is being rolled out into Kalgoorlie, an area in Kalgoorlie, with a company fairly shortly for further testing, but we're pretty confident with this system. So, you know, you all know about data. We've been collecting data for forever, and now we've got all these different machines we can collect data for. And we can use the different machines for different types of data. So we can look for geochemistry, we can look for mineralogy, we can look for petrophysical properties such as magnetic susceptibility, gamma, whatever. But what do you do with it? So we're in an era of machine learning, and it hasn't been the silver bullet, I think we could agree, but we are there now. Now in CSIRO, we have a whole team, what's called a future science platform that just works on AI and machine learning. And we have a whole unit in Data 61 that is focused on AI. I'm told by all of them that our data is crap, that they can't use our data. In fact, I went and sat with our machine learning postdoc recently in Brisbane, and to meet her, because, you know, she's in Brisbane, most of the people that she's working with at the moment in my team are in Perth, and I went and sat with her. And I said, well, how are you going with all the data we gave you? And she goes, oh, Sandy, it's so terrible. And we're CSIRO, so we have scanned the cores very carefully with a bunch of different machines, everything spatial, we've sent it to her, we've worked with her, there's not enough data. So one of the jobs that we're looking at is actually making these data machine learning ready. Okay, so here's another project, some data from another project, Konkari project. I think they looked at 30 mineral deposits in Queensland, and they collected a bunch of data. And they were able to see the zoning around the deposits. It was really great. So they could look at you know, relative mineral abundance through these indices through here, GChem. They could look at the petrophysics together, the chemistry and the radiometrics. They're all co-located, these data. It's still not machine learning ready. So that's something that we're working on internally. And what we would like to see is groups like CSIRO putting out machine learning ready data sets for people to use. Okay, so that sort of just really labours the point, I think. So I'll show you some work where we have used machine learning, very useful, and it's been very useful. Okay, so here's data Mosaic. Again, I showed you that a little earlier, but here's a project that one of our interns completed recently. And you can see here the drill logs, these multi-variant, derived from multivariate data, and you can see the clustering in here. But what he's done is what he did was he took the geochemical data, he classified the data, he popped in the geologist logs, okay, and he trained the algorithm to get out to basically highlight proper logs in those clusters. Okay, so normally when you use machine learning to cluster, or some clustering mechanism to cluster your data, you don't actually know what the rock is. So what he did for this site was, at this site we know what the rock is now. So here we go, put it in 3D. You can see like he hasn't interpolated this or anything. There's just that much drilling, so that's all good. But you can see the different units through here, and then we can see the unsupervised and the supervised logs. So you can see how powerful it is. So we know that usually when we try to do this with drill logs, we can't do it very easily. It's very difficult, particularly when drilling like this has been completed over many, many years, maybe decades, and we're trying to match up what each other have done. When you go back to the data, but you still compare them to the drill logs, you can start to get coherent understanding of what's going on in 3D. Okay, so one of the projects we're just finishing up at the moment was a large-scale project in the Pilbara. So iron ore country, obviously, and what we found was that before we embarked on this project, is that there hadn't been a coherent program of work done there by a research organisation ever with the 4 big companies that are working in that region. And we thought, wouldn't it be good if we could do some sort of coherent work there? And so we did. So FMG, BHP, Rio Tinto, and Roy Hill came on board. It was sponsored by MEGWA. And what we did was throughout the Hamersley region, we built a 3D model of the whole Hamersley region using LIBS, which is a new software solution, basically. So built through the LIBS consortia. We also did quite a lot of GChem and dating. And so what we've got in the end, was a sort of a 4D understanding of how this region developed through time, and also how the iron ore developed in that region through time. So you can see here some of the dates. You've got 1260 for the age of the iron ore development in that part of the Pilbara and the Pilbara. So why bother? So why bother with 3D? Geology is 3D, and in the Pilbara, in these particular ore bodies, the idea is that in areas where you get structural thinning, they're the areas where the most valuable iron ore deposits are going to be. So if we go back just one notch here, you can see this is massive 3D model of the region. If we start to cut that model and slice and dice the model, we can see where the units are thinned, and then start to focus our exploration in those regions, or our drilling in those regions. One of the other things that we did with this work by Mark Lindsay and others, Mark was at UWA when he started this work, and he's now at CSIRO, is we started to test some of the prospectivity models and mineral systems models for that region. And what Mark actually found in these models is that the geological maps were often not really required to get these models out. So basically we used a bunch of different models that were published in published literature. He popped that data into the models, and then he sort of redid them, and found that geology was not required. So there's not much good news for us. It wasn't always the most important. It was required, but it wasn't always the most important layer. So we have so much data now that we can start to use our other data with confidence.
So the geology contaminates the picture.
It might do, Stephen. Okay, so here's just a picture of our mobile petrophysical logger. You can see the little logos on the side. So there's Auscope, University of Melbourne, and CSIRO is very prominent there. You'll notice in this photo, because I'm from CSIRO. But basically and a few years ago at CSIRO, before I joined, the group was reviewed. And one of the things that came out in the review is that we're not doing enough in geophysics. Okay, in deep geophysics, in understanding the relationship of petrophysics, the petrophysical properties of rock, and the geophysical data that we all have available to us through we're very lucky in Australia from the state and federal governments, but also that we collect as part of our day-to-day work when we're exploring. So to help combat that, we built this thing, and at the moment it's actually at the Geological Survey of South Australia's core library collecting data. So why is it important to understand the relationship between petrophysics and geophysics? Well, basically we know that the geophysics that you collect from the air or even from the ground, when you grid it up, it's basically a 3D volume. Often we look at it on a 2D surface. And even when we look at it as a 3D volume, we're not very confident about where the different signals are coming from, or where those pictures really are coming from, because we're seeing it in pictures, really. I'm just going to show you a little bit of work that we've been doing in Victoria. And here, what you can see here is on the right here, this is the petrophysical data taken from drill core. So if we just go back one, you can see the drill cores here in this region. So we got petrophysical data from drill core. Okay, so density, magnetic susceptibility, and we extracted the same data from the geophysics in that region. Victoria is not known for its really great gravity data, so that might be why it's so sparse. But you can see that there's a fairly good correlation. But you know, this is a fairly you know, early days type of work. When we start to put the petrophysical data though into our models, they start to skew our models. So what we find is that we actually get some skewing in our inversions. So we have to start to work on this and work out whether it is okay to do constrained inversions, when it is okay to do them, etc. So geophysics is king. I love geophysics even though I'm a geologist. And one of the reasons why it's really, one of the things we use it for obviously is to try to understand where we're going to be drilling to. So the depth to area of interest. One of the things that our team has been doing is using Bayesian statistics to work out where those spots are. So here's here's an area in, I think, put it up there, but I think it's in Queensland. Stuart Shelf, no, Stuart Shelf, we gave me the Stuart Shelf stuff. So in Stuart Shelf there in South Australia. And so what the team have done is using different piercing points, basically, from different types of data, they've been able to constrain their geophysical models, essentially. So we use this, we call this multi-physics inversion. But basically they're using surface geology, drill holes, information from drill holes, MT and AEM, and you can see the uncertainty around this surface that's coming out in the inversions. Okay, so I'm jumping now from depth to cover or even drill core. Obviously, there's a real focus on critical minerals because we need lots of them. So what are we doing so that we can find them easily? One of the things we're doing at CSIRO is we are looking at the spectra of different critical minerals. So you can see there's 4 listed here, and you can see the spectra of them. The strong parts of the spectra are very similar. So we're building libraries to be able to read these spectra and pop into programs such as the Spectral Geologist. And why is that important? It's not just important for discovery. We are using it in satellite sensors, obviously. I've been working with Boeing on satellite sensors. We use the spectra, obviously we get the spectra of handheld instruments as well, and benchtop instruments or instruments such as the high logger. But what we're finding is that it's not just important for discovery, obviously it's very important for sorting. So then if we find a deposit, can we use our spectra to help to sort our deposit? And here's an example where someone has done that. My colleagues in sensing and sorting at CSIRO in Mineral Resources are doing that as well. But of course, spectra by itself is not always, it's not always good just to use it by itself. So the other thing that we're using it with is EM. So we're doing this at the mine scale, but we could also start to look at this at the regional scale. So the country has basically, so since this image was made for me, I don't know, beginning of the year, but I think this grid's all been finished now. So basically the country is pretty much going to be completely flown by EM soon. And we can start to use the airborne spectra with the EM and with hydrogeochemistry, with hydrogeology to understand our landscapes and where our different geochemical signatures are coming from. So he's got in here as well, cover, we could use it for cover mapping, etc., etc. So one of the other projects I wanted to highlight was our indicator minerals project. Basically, this is for nickel PGEs at the moment, headed up by Louise Schoneveld and Margot Levalon. And it's basically built on all those years of research around nickel in CSIRO. We're trying to build a tool that then industry can use going forward. So the tool what we're looking at is both in situ, so we're looking at indicator minerals in situ rock, and we're looking at ex situ, so indicator minerals in the regolith. And we're hoping that within about another 12 months, we'll know whether systems that we've developed are working for targeting these sorts of deposits. But of course, in the future, so in the next couple of years, we'll be doing the same thing, probably around rare earths and lithium. At CSIRO, we developed the Maya mapper, the Maya micro XRF mapper, and it takes in samples that are about 50 centimetres by 20 centimetres, 50 centimetres long by 15 or 20 centimetres wide, so it's good to drill core. And what we can do with the Maya mapper is we can start to see the chemistry of your rock, basically. So you can see that here, and it's pretty awesome to see these different gold hotspots. I think they're going to come up. No, they're not coming up, so the animation's not working. But what we've found with the Maya mapper, because you can collect so much data in such a large section, is that you can start to plot your data out and see different generations of different elements in the mapper. We're working on ways, we think that these data sets are statistically meaningful and will be able to feed into GeoMet models in the future. All right, now I've got a big section on the regolith, thanks to Ryan Noble. So here we go. So, and anyone that knows me knows I hate mapping the regolith, but anyway, I've got a newfound love for it. The regolith is often the first thing after geophysics that we use to try to target towards mineral discoveries. And as we move into critical minerals, perhaps, it has a newfound meaning as well, because we could look for a lot of things that we never used to look for in the regolith, and also we can use different tools through the regolith as well. So we know at CSIRO we're using interfaces in the regolith, we're using different fractions in the regolith as well. So many of you will know about ultrafines, and LabWest is we've licensed our ultrafines methodology to LabWest. And what they've found with ultrafines is that it's not just about the way you analyse your sample, it's about the way you analyse the analyses on your sample. So it's what you do with it. So when we think about that, basically what we've done here is here you can see some plots around some analyses. These are landscape evolution maps or landscaping maps here. So these different domains in the landscape. Above this line normally would be where we'd say that there's easily identified anomalies. But when you just look at the anomalies based on the domain that they belong to, you can see that there are anomalies that you would miss if you didn't understand where you'd taken that sample from. And I've got a whole movie to show you about that in a minute, so I won't go into it in too much detail. How do we get those landscape domains? So it's from machine learning, so we've used machine learning to derive those. And what we've done is that we've grabbed anything that belongs to the surface, so valley bottom thickness of regolith, the DEM, I can't see from the side so well, but is that radiometrics? Yeah. And we've clustered those data. You can see the clusters through here, or we can see them. They've gone through a machine learning processing here, and then they've been clustered. And then we've basically taken these dots and popped them back to where they belong spatially. Okay, so that's what we've done there. So it's a spatial machine learning method. We've also produced an automated principal component analysis tool. So if we look at any of these, let's just look at the blue areas in here. So that's PCO0. You can see here that there are anomalous in particular elements. I think, and again, I can't see at the side, I think it's arsenic in here, maybe bismuth in here. And if we start to look at, I think, PCO0 in here, we can see that those parts there are these anomalous areas spatially. So we can start to do that. But that's part of this package, this Ultrafines Plus package that you would get if you did Ultrafines analyses with LabWest.
So here you see the web-based viewer with a range of different tiles, and this is a very large survey. And so on the top right here is the clustering. This is using 12.
So I should just explain this for a
clusters, and you
second.
can
We have a
see
web-based
that
viewer
same
for
sort of spatial
Occhipinti.
projection over on the left here in 3
Can you hear
dimensions.
it?
You can quickly see that's the coloured scale, but you can see where those actual clusters break down. So now you get a visual feel for which ones are related and how they actually link up. So this one here are very similar, and you can see on the map this is a large granite influenced area, and it shows up the radiometrics. So these are the data sets that come in to make that landscape. And so it starts to make sense when you're looking at it. There's a large salt lake, and you can see.
So what we found was there was no program available to do this, so we had to build our own. We could see all the maps side by side.
Surveys, or Geoscience Australia, you can tell the different units. So most of these are cover, sheet wash. There's a little bit of exposed stuff in the blue, and you can see how that matches up with the clustering. And then on the surface geology, you can see some of this as well. Now, what's really, I think, most amazing is that you can quickly put on your geochemistry, for example. Now, as I mentioned, this is a very large survey, so we'll just put on all the values for gold. You can see that there's a huge amount of them at the moment. There's about somewhere between 10 and 15,000 samples in the survey. It's over many kilometres, so you want to be able to find your anomalies quite quickly. And so to do that, you might just go, well, what are the landscapes, the anomalies by cluster? And now you can start to see those by colour in the different landscape units, which are the actual anomalous samples. So to take an area and have a look at that closer, I'll just pick an area. So I'll zoom in. One of those, may not be able to quite see that toggle, but I'll zoom in on a little area here. Example, in the cover. And you can see here's a nice little cluster of elevated gold values. Now, as you scroll over those, you can actually see the actual concentrations reported. And you can see the type of landscape that they sit in. And this is, thicker cover as you trend an aerial sort of satellite imagery here. You can see a little bit more information. You can also see the magnetics, gravity, weather intensity, just other bits of information that you can help to interpret the data. Now, you might be interested in whether that's stands out as a multi-element, like a principal component. So you can quickly click on that and see the actual component loadings in that space too. So here's, highly loaded as component 0. Now, I don't know exactly what the components are for this survey, but you get a feel really quickly where areas of interest are. You can also look at those values in their actual concentration. So while they're not that brightly, the brighter white they are, the bigger the concentration. So they're not that elevated, but they are elevated for the region of interest. And now other information you might look at is some of the soil properties. So is there a reason to explain perhaps those anomalies? And you can see pH here really quickly, so it doesn't look like there's a real change in pH. So 4 to 5 sort of region, there's a little bit of a high pH down in this part, whereas there's a little bit of upland area. And then you can see other parameters, conductivity. You can have a quick look at the texture. So one of the things you might want to know is how much clay is in these samples. And you can very quickly see that as you get into the deeper cover, the texture gets more loamy sand compared to sandy loam. So the clay is dropping off as you get into those materials. So that makes sense with our understanding. You can also see a range of different things. So you can actually see the content, the clay composition, and the percentage of those materials. Other things you might want to look at are some of the spectral mineralogy. So one of the things I've talked about before is how much soil organic carbon can influence your geochemistry. So here's a total organic carbon by weight percentage. And you see that none of the samples that we're interested in here in terms of gold anomalies seem to have an organic carbon, a high organic carbon, so they may not be scavenging those materials. So that's a good indication that might be an area of interest. And then you have a range of different mineral groups developed by the spectral mineralogy from the near infrared, visible near infrared. See, these are all kaolin, not surprising because we're separating out that clay size fraction. But in the secondary identified mineralogy, you get a little bit of smectite being noticed and white mica, nothing too unusual there, and some other ALOH groups.
Okay, so that goes on. It was 10 minutes, so I shortened it quite a lot, but I think you get the idea. So the idea from our point of view is not just doing that fundamental science, and I know I haven't spoken a lot about that today. It's about translating that fundamental science into something that's useful, that you can actually access easily, and hopefully start to understand that fundamental science behind what you're accessing. But one of the things we are doing at CSIRO, CSIRO has been very well known over the years for its regolith geochemistry and its regolith group. And we've done a regolith reloading in our group, basically. So what we've had is we've completed a series of workshops and sort of surveys, and we're understanding that we need to look at exploration through cover, exploration through deeper cover, exploration in cover, explore cutting edge technologies to help us, and explore for the new minerals industry in the regolith. And so what's that going to look like? Obviously, we've got the ultrafines thing happening, and that will continue. So the ultrafines project that we ran over the last couple of years is coming to an end, but we will continue it going forward, I believe, with LabWest, hopefully. And we'll also be improving and making more available the landscape mapping. So we believe that landscape domaining and mapping can be used for any samples going forward. And we're also developing a decision support app to help people understand where is a good place to sample, so that you don't have to perhaps sample on a grid. Obviously looking at the cover commodities, salty systems. I've tasked the team to be able to see through salt lakes. I'm not very popular. But if we could crack salt lakes, we'd crack everything, I reckon. That'd be great. And obviously hydrogeochemistry. So I'm just going to flick through these. These are some of the ideas that they've come up with, basically to support what I've just gone through. So the aim, advance the characterisation and understanding of salt lakes, because you need to do that to understand what's beneath them, and we've started doing that. We've obviously tried over the years, but we've got a few other ideas. And part of that, to do that, part of the way of doing that is to integrate geophysical methods into tracing different features within the salt lake, so that we can understand what to sample. This is the landscape stuff that we talked about earlier, and that we are continuing. Regolith reloaded. There are a lot of samples available in archives, and we have different ways of analysing them now, and we can analyse them for chemistry that we didn't analyse them for before. So one of the things we're going to look at is ways of doing that. All right, so that's the geology kind of part, the traditional stuff. And I'm just going to give you a taste of some of the other things that we do within our group, which might surprise you or might not. Mineral carbonation is a big thing in this state, and it's becoming a big thing in Australia to try to suck the carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. And so we're involved in a future science platform called Carbon Lock. And Carbon Lock and also our mission, net zero emissions mission at CSIRO, are looking at different ways we could actually mitigate our climate problem through locking carbon. And one of the things we did recently was just produce a map of all of the sort of the mafic, ultramafics that are, this is derived from the surface geology map from Geoscience Australia, around the place where there are mines. So mines operating or closed, in development containing gold, mines operating or closed in development containing nickel. And then I think, I don't know if I did others. Yeah, commodities other than gold and nickel was the other thing, which you probably can't see very well. So, you know, there's been some stuff in the press around applying mineral carbonation to tailings around places like in the goldfields, so around Mount Keith, for example, that we think that there might be a lot more potential in other parts as well, because of the greenstones that are in those regions. It all depends on the mineralogy, basically. So how are we going to find these areas, these areas which contain potential ex situ or in situ mineral carbonation sites into the future? We're using geophysics to do this. So we're trying to work on different geophysical methods to be able to map out areas with the right mineralogy to find those sites. All right, so where are we going? We sit in here, somewhere between universities and industry. We do fundamental science, although I didn't go through really any of the high cutting edge stuff that we're doing at the moment. But really what we're trying to do is build those tools to bridge the fundamental science that we do into industry. And that's pretty much it from me, except we have a seminar on September the 15th. And the people actually do the work, because I don't do anything anymore. They're going to be there. And give you a much better take on what they're doing at that seminar. And we'll probably have about 50 researchers or and engineers at that seminar as well that you can talk to if you want to talk about what they're doing. So that's just down here in East Perth. And also with another hat that I have on, I'm the chair of Geoconferences, and we're running the RKN Symposium next year in Fremantle. So that'll run over 3 days in Fremantle. So if you're interested, if you work in Archean rocks or Proterozoic rocks, because we've kind of extended it to pre-Cambrian really, please come along to that. That should be a lot of fun. And that's us. That's our group when we were allowed to be together. So we should be allowed to be together again in September. So that's all good. Thank you.